Hello, my dear fellow travelers, friends, and photographers around the world. Welcome back to Chris Lee Travel Channel. In these 7 episodes of my travel journey to northern Pakistan, I will sharing with you some of the ancient forts as well as villages that have more than 1,000 years old. Please stay tuned. Now let's look at the map on this slide. It shows you the map of Pakistan, and we are actually covering the northern section of Pakistan, and the region that named as Gilgit-Baltistan, right, is a province, northern province of Pakistan. And we are still around the region under the name Karimabad, and which is the beginning of my journey in this Hunza Valley. I've covered quite detail of Karimabad, but today we will be focusing on the historical fort as well as village. So the locations that I'm sharing with you today still remain at around the same spot that have been circled in blue as shown in this map. And if we look at this province map of northern Pakistan, which the Gilgit-Baltistan province, and we are in this district called Hunza Naga district. So we are actually in a region they classify as Middle Hunza, and it's actually quite almost to the edge, to the the southern edge of the upper Hunza Valley. So now let's begin with the first fort. It's called Altit Fort. Now before we go into the image proper, let's have some background of Altit Fort. Now Altit Fort is an ancient fort in the Altit town in the Hunza district of Gilgit-Baltistan, Pakistan. Now it was originally home to the so-called the rulers of the Hunza state who carried the title Mir, M-I-R, Mir. Right? Although they moved to the somewhat younger or rather latest fort called Baltic Fort nearby, that which is 3 centuries ago. Right? Altic Fort, particularly the Shikari Tower, is around 1,100 years old by now, which make it the oldest monuments in the Gilgit-Baltistan. Now the forts have received the UNESCO Asia Pacific Heritage Award for the Cultural Heritage Conservation in the year 2011. Now the word Altik, which means this side down, right, and the area around the fort is inhabited by a Boroso people, and in the 16th century, the local prince married a princess from the Baltistan who bought master Balti craftsmen and to build the 2 forts, namely the Altik and the Baltic forts. Now the people of Altik are said, right, to belong to the White Hunt. Although not much research has gone into the matter, there are several theories about their origin, but local indigenous origins hold much value, right, among the people. It's also said that the present language that they call it Burushaki, was brought here by the White Hunt in the 47 AD. But they have no link between the Burushaki and any other languages of today, right? So according to the legend, the first name for the Altit village was Hunu Kusat, and which is meaning of the village of Han. And the Hans in these instances was come from the Huanghe Valley in China. Huanghe means yellow river. Right? The name later changed to Brosha, translate to a village of the Bruchiski speakers, right? Now, they were spirit worshipper of Shamanisms, and also they follow Buddhism and Hinduism in the 15th century, and Islam was then introduced. And around the 1830, in turn, many converted to Muslim. So, in other words, I would like even to share with you my experience when I was in Russia, in the so-called Lake Baikal. We also come across the shamanisms, kind of indigenous religions that found in the southern Russia, which actually is the Siberia regions. So that's much all about this Altit Fort. And if you look at the map in this slide, you notice that the Altit Fort is actually sit right next to the Hunza River, right? And of course, it's not far from Karimabad. And you can see the tower, the watchtower, and the buildings, which is basically constructed of stone and timber. There are not much steps to climb, although this fort was stood on top of a small hill, overseeing the Hunza River. And the use of the timber together with the stone is actually one of the best way I can find in this region that give the fort some form of stability to the structures. This Altit Fort was, of course, surrounded by high peaks around the region, and this is the internal views of the Altit Fort. Now, Altit Fort, in this region, you find that most, even the modern home today, you find that they were found to have skylight, as can be seen in this image right above, and right below the skylight, they will then place a fireplace. And this is for to serve the purpose of keeping warm during the winter months. And while the skylight will providing the daylighting during the day, as well as improve the ventilation in the building. And one thing you need to note that you can see the construction of this skylight. I have named it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In other words, the skylight was built gradually by overlapping of timber in 6 layers from a big opening to a smaller opening, as can be seen in this image. And these typical construction methods have been used in this region to most houses. And of course, in this building, as usual, the construction material are mainly relying on clays as well as stone plus also the timber. As can be seen from the image beside the 1,100 years old watch tower, the building internally also have lasted a few centuries. And here in this image, I am actually make to highlight that one is that on the left. You can see that the stone wall actually is like chimney-like structures. A very solid chimney-like structure will form the main structure of this fort. And then you can see that the floor, each level of floor was then supported by wooden beams, and you can see that the column, the propping, the beam, they're using a kind of construction T-like construction method to enhance the support of these horizontal members of the building, the beam in this case. And some of these supporting structure were even very intricately crafted, as can be seen in this image. And this is just a closer view of the carvings that found on these column support. And the perimeter wall of this fort is fairly thick, of not less than 600 millimeters, or approximately 24-inch, or even thicker. You can see that from the windows that looking out into the Hunza Valley, and particularly facing the Hunza River. I will share with you some of the images that look out from this window as well from the rooftop of the fort. We are almost reaching the highest floor of the fort. The wood carving in this fort are very fascinating, and you can see that they did just some of the carving works that found on the building wooden structures, on the door or jamb or door frames, as well as the window around the window frames. And of course, you also can find some very old, solid wooden door. It also intricately crafted, and also some columns inside the building, inside the fort. A much closer view of the carving works. And when you reach the top of the fort itself, you still have a watchtower that go beyond the roof to a higher level. As I say, as a watchtower, you need to be at a high position in order to have a best view of the surrounding. And in this image, I want you to pay attention on the constructions of this watchtower. You can see that they are using the timber as well as stone or rocks, in this case, whichever you like to call it. And they lay in such a manner that systematically in layer, and in between they have added in the horizontal timber member as well as vertical timber member to hold the stone rigidly together. So here you can see the construction method is quite unique, but of course this is one of the good methods of constructions using different material. We are now at the roof, and this is just an aerial view of this Altit Fort, and you can see that right at the far left top corner is the Hunza River, and right on the right top corner, I've highlighted a building at the more to the edge there. This is where the location of a restaurant that we have our meal, and surrounding this restaurant is the Royal Gardens. So in fact, we have opportunity to have a meal in that restaurant, at the same time roam around in this Royal Gardens while visiting this fort. So we're going to have a magnificent view of the Hunza Valley as well as some of the mountain peaks right at the rooftop of the fort. And of the right hand bottom there's a river, and that river is the Hunza River. And next to the Hunza River, across the river, will be the Karakoram Highway. Now you then will be able to see a much wider view of the village valley around this area. So you see a road there on the right hand side, And that route that I refer to is the Karakoram Highway. And further away from the Karakoram Highway that run parallelly on the foothill is where the old Sail Road is located. It's a small little path, right? Only a small personal, as you say, the path is not wider than 2 meter, and only a small, not even vehicle, maybe just for people to pass through. More view around the Altit Fort, sorry. And as I mentioned just now, the Royal Gardens. So these are the few of the images of the Royal Gardens that we at our lunch next to it. And the view from the restaurant is spectacular, as can be seen in this image and the subsequent images. Then we come to another fort. It's called the Baltit Fort. If you still recall my last episode, we are roaming around on the old shopping street and right below the Baltit Fort. And the Baltit Fort is right above it of the old street, and as well at above a hill just above the Karim Abad. And interestingly, the name Karim Abad is a new recent name. The old name of Karim Abad in actual fact is Baltik. So when it's Baltit Fort, it's actually a place they call Baltik, and the fort they built there, and they call it Baltit Fort. But now the Baltik is no longer used. Instead, they change the name to Karim Abad. Right? So this is just to explain to you that the Baltit Fort is the old name. Baltik is the old name of Karim Abad. So Baltit Fort is an 8th century fort in the Hunza district and situated near the town of Karimabad, as I mentioned earlier. Was once the capital of the state of Hunza, now the Tehsil. Tehsil is meant the district, so it's a district headquarters of Gilgit. So this Baltit Fort also been awarded the UNESCO World Heritage tentative list in the list itself since 2004. In fact, they are trying to get it recognized as a heritage site until today. I'm not sure whether it has been awarded, but it's been on the list since 2004. Now, the fort is reachable by Karakoram Highway as usual. That is because of Karakoram Highway that they open up this region to the outside world. Now, the Baltit Fort stand on an artificial flattened spur below the Altar Glacier. In other words, the Altit Fort is not very far from this Altar Glacier. Now, strategically located with a commanding view of the Hunza Valley and its tributaries, and its inhabitants control the seasonal Karakoram trade between the South and Central Asia in the past. In other words, for those who want to travel and passing through this region, they have to get the local ruler approval before they can cross over. So the mayor of the Hunza abandoned the fort in 1945 and moved to a new palace down the hill. And then the fort started to decay, which have caused concern that it may be possible fall into ruins. Now, following a survey by the Royal Geographical so-called Society of London, so a restoration program was then initiated and supported by the Aga Khan Trust, for the culture historic city support programs. Now, then the program was then completed in the year 1996, and the fort is now a museum run by a Baltic Heritage Trust. Now, the Baltistan, with the meaning of a land and Baltic people, had a very strong cultural and relations with the Lada territory of India, Lada territory of India then. Now, consequently, the structure of Baltic fort was influenced by the Lada or Tibetan architecture, with some resemblance to the Potala Palace in Lhasa, right? Then additions, renovations, and changes to the building were being made throughout the century by the long line of rulers of the Hunza that follow. In other words, there are many changes that have taken place over time by many rulers that rule that district. So the Baltic fort is rectangular in plan, right, and 3-floor and stand on a high stone plinth, right. While the ground floor, which is actually consists of mainly of storage chambers, and the first floor is orientated around as open halls. A staircase leads to the second floor, which was mainly used during the winter months and contained an audience hall, guest room, dining hall, kitchen, and servants' quarters. Then a further staircase then leads up to the third floor, which is partly enclosed with opening to the exterior and house the summer dining rooms for the king, right, or for the rulers. Now at the same time, you also locate the audience chambers and bedrooms and reception hall. Now, inhabited by the mayor or the leader or ruler of Hunza, which until 1945, the view of the Hunza Valley from the Baltic fort indeed is fascinating and a pleasure to many of the visitors. So it is important to note that the one of the biggest changes in the structures of the Baltic fort that came with the invasion of the British in the December of 1891. Now, with the conquer of the Hunza and the Naga state by the British forces in December 1891, the fortified wall and watchtowers of the old Baltic village and watchtower of the Baltic fort on its northern western end were also demolished as desired by the British authority. And then the British then installed the fleet time mill, which basically under the name Sardaril Khan, which is the ruler of the Hunza younger brothers, and as the ruler of Hunza state in September 1892. And this Mir Nazim Khan then makes several major alterations to the Baltic fort. He demolished a number of rooms at the third floor and added a few rooms in the British colonial style on the front elevation and using lime wash and colored glass panel window. I will share with you some of these renovations that I've done lately, as been described earlier, particularly on the so-called the glass panel window later on. The conservation works carried out in the 1990s, is only recently, indicated that the core of the structure that lie entirely on a single defensive tower built of timber and stone that built in the 8th century, which I've shared with you just now in one of the image. And now this tower was augmented, all right, by the additional tower and linked by a single-story constructions consisting of small room and subsurface storage chamber. Now the complex was then later expanded, right, by the addition of a second and then a third floor. The structural stone wall built on the area of frequent seismic movement, which caused by slight earthquakes, and were provided with a traditional internal so-called frameworks of timber for greater stability, which I have mentioned just now in my image. So let's look at this image of Baltic Fort. And the location of Baltic Fort I've shown is right on the hills, flattened top of the hill, and just above the Karim Abad town. So this is another image to share with you on this location of Baltic Fort. So this is a sign, and you can see here is mentioned UNESCO World Heritage. It's a tentative on the tentative list, and since 2004. And this is a location maps in the Baltic Fort. It's a rectangular, rough rectangular shaped building. At the bottom of the fort, you look up. This is how it look like. Another view. I can see that there's the balcony that cantilever out from the fort is located on the 3rd floor. And right at the foothills, you look up, this is the Baltic Fort. You only need a very short climb to reach this Baltic Fort from the strait below. And even before entering the Baltic Fort, you already have a very good view of this Karimabad town that's right below you. So we ascend through this door all the way up. And the lowest floor, as I mentioned earlier, are mainly storage chamber, and it's only from the 1st floor onwards where they stay with people. So these are some of the displays you can find, because this Baltic Fort has now turned into a museum. And this, from this looking down, is actually the storage chamber. And this place is where the kitchen is located. You can see the artifacts that are left behind as exhibit. Now you find the daylight, the skylight in this case, right above. And these are modern constructions as influenced by the British colonial style of constructions. The ceiling at this 3rd floor is fairly fascinating, and these actually the extended rooms. And some of the carving, you can notice the carving in these Baltic forts, and it's very similar to the Altit fort. And this is actually the overlooking the from the window, and right above, below, and go beyond this is the cantilever balcony. This is a semi-enclosed, very a nice rest place. And I was told actually part of the rooms have been converted into hotels for guests to stay on, and it's not open to visitors. The living place, and as usual, you have a skylight, and right below it is a fireplace. The fireplace right below the skylight, and some of the furnitures on displays. These are guest rooms. It's where, meeting rooms. Do you notice that the window, the color glass window, this is actually the latest construction, as I mentioned just now. The British corner style, right? The so-called the colored glass panel window. It's very rare, but it's unique, right? And as usual, the standard way of the typical way of construction of the column capital that's supporting the horizontal member, the beam, the wooden beam above, the floor above, some of the weapons, and musical instruments, and at the cantilever balcony, overseeing the Karimabad Valley, Hunza Valley. Some of the currency, old currency, some of the displays, the image of the rulers, and this seems to be I'm not sure it's about, but I think it looks like it's a Japanese document from during the Japanese era. More wooden carvings on the structures. A nice place to take your naps during winter, right above the rooftop of these Baltic forts. The external facade around the Baltic fort, and some of the wooden carvings on the roof, overhang roof. More wooden structure around the buildings. So the carving here is also very interesting. Here you have a overview of the Karimabad right below us. Then lastly, we're going to bring you to another village, a village they call it Ganish Village, believed to have more than 1,000 years old. And this Ganish village is claimed to be the oldest living village in the entire Baltistan region, and was guarded by an old watchtower and one of the iconic Shikari watchtower, and the fort sit on fertile flat lands and above a river in Pakistan. Right, it's just next to the river, not far from the river. It's located about 90 km from the Gilgit town, and which is the provincial capital of the Gilgit-Baltistan. Meaning of the word Ganish is unknown, but according to the local scholar, is derived from the Burush Shaki words Ganish, which are meaning go. Now, it is the oldest and the first settlement. Ganish village is one of the oldest and first settlements of the ancient Silk Roads and now the Karakoram Highway. In the heart of the Hunza Valley, just about 6 km beyond the Altit Baltit town. Now, Karakoram Highway makes a sweeping S-bend down past the Ganish village to the bridge crossing the Hunza Valley. So later I will share with you the location map of where exactly this Ganish Valley village is located. Now, Ganish Village is the site of the ancient watchtower. It is also the traditional old carved mosses, and in fact it's a wooden mosses then, and the religious center as well, and a reservoir. So Ganish has been a major town for the traveler since the day of the Silk Road and the now Karakoram Highway. Like Gilgit, Ganish Village was an important staging post on the Silk Roads and was heavily traveled for thousands of years by traders going back and forth between the China, India, and the West over the Kiling, Mintaka, Papit, and also Kunjerab passes. Now, Ganish is a home to 4 UNESCO heritage award winning mosques that are said to have been constructed, right, approximately 400 years ago. Now, the fortified settlement have about 12-meter Tamukas, a watchtower of tall. The height of it was 12 meter, approximately 40 feet high, which was used in the past for the surveillance of surrounding, especially at night. Now, the settlement used to be at a high risk of attack and looting because of its location along the ancient Silk Roads. So let's look at this Ganish village. So you can see the S-bend right below on this map, and after the S-bend you realize that actually you are crossing the Hunza Valley, Hunza River, and the Ganish village is not far away from Karim Abad, right? So this is the location map of this Ganish village. At the roadside you will see this sign posting indicating, telling you that it's 1,000 years old, historic Ganish settlement. And of course, next to the village, the settlement, you can see it's a flat, fertile lands. And when you enter to this Ganish village, then you come across a water retention pond. In fact, this water retention pond is actually the reservoir of the village. Of course, there are some of the buildings are originally constructed. You can see between the old and the new building structures in this village. And you also will find quite a number of watchtowers. Just for example, in this image, you will already see two watchtower. So the reservoir, closer view, quite a large reservoir comparatively to the size of the village. You can see the village were actually enclosed by a high wall and with watchtower in between. The construction method, you can see the construction, the nature, the way he constructed is similar to Baltic Fort as well as to Altit Forts. So the main is building around that era, during the about 1,000 years till the most recent 200-300 years ago. And you notice in this image, there's a wooden hook that protruding out from the wall, and I was told this wooden hook was used for the anchoring of the animals, the livestock that come together with the trader. It can be the horse, it can be camels. So they will then hold on to these wooden hooks. It was placed externally of the wall of the village, the surrounding the village. So externally of the village was fully enclosed by a high wall and thick solid wall, right? And these are some of the buildings that you can find wooden structures. This is internally of the after enter from the door into this village. There's many zigzag small tunnel crossing connecting every corner of the village. This is just one of them. One passageway right below building, a small wooden tunnels, small tunnels, and these are some of the constructions. You can see the timbers, the use of timber and stone to make up the structures. And this is actually the crafted wooden mosses. As I say, mentioned just now, there are 4 UNESCO listed old mosses, wooden mosses are found in this corner of the village. And you can see the wood carving on these old mosses. It's not a tall building. I think the height is probably about 8 feet or about 2.4 meters. Above that, but have a lot intricate wood carving on the face of the building, both externally and internally. So you can see that over time, the carving also not the same. You can see the carving on the left and the right, and there seem to be a slight differences. This show that the passage of time over the thousands of years. Of course, these mosses have about 400 years old. So the highlight of this wooden mosses is all the wood carving, be it on the door or on the windows or even on the roof, on the structures, as well as you can see that even the door is very unique. This is a locking mechanism for the door. And we are visiting during the autumn, of course, we will greet with those golden color leaf around the village. It's still a living village. You still found villagers staying in this old village. So that's about all for today that I'm sharing with you this Ganish Village, Baltic Fort and Altit Forts. And in the next episode, I shall move on further and bring you to the Upper Hunza regions of Hunza village or valley, sorry. And I thank you for staying until this hour with me. If you have not have subscribed to my channel, please do so and supporting my this non-profit making travel channels with the aim of sharing my travel images to the friend around the world. As usual, in the coming weeks, that I shall share with you on my the eighth episode of my travel journey to northern Pakistan. Till then, I will see you again in the coming week, and bye.